Women are attracted to your value, your survivability, how apt you are to survive in today's society. A guy who survives well in today's society doesn't need to sell himself, doesn't need to justify himself, is confident within himself, and doesn't need you in any way whatsoever.
That's the key right there. He doesn't need you, which must mean that he is of high value. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. I'm here with dating coach Mark Singh. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Appreciate you having me, Andrew.
So what led you to reach out to me? You've been hitting me up for months and you're like, hey, let's do a show. Let's do something. I've been busy focusing on things. What's the deal?
It's in line with each other, brother. I like what you do. You have a big audience, wanted to reach out to them. So I respect what you're up to. We need more voices like ours in the industry for sure.
I agree. Yeah. Similar content and mission with helping men. How did you get started with this?
Cheated on big time, where I heard her having sex in her dorm room with another dude. And the whole time I was kissing her butt, blowing smoke up her ass, fluffing her feathers, putting her on a pedestal. And then she cheats on me. And I was like, what the heck did I do wrong? I was treating this girl like gold. So I started studying it, and it immediately occurred to me that I didn't have frame. I wasn't in the leadership role. I was needy. I was supplicating to her, as I said. And then it kind of brought me into this whole industry of studying this stuff, studying masculinity. And eventually I started getting success. People started asking me questions. I launched a podcast that became really successful, and here we are today.
Cheated on, and you said did I hear this? You heard it, or you were there, like in the other room?
I heard it, bro, through her dorm room door. Imagine the love of your life, the girl who you think is like the girl you're going to marry. You hear her, because you know her voice, having sex with another guy in her dorm room. I literally fell to the ground to my knees, crawled out of the dormitory, drove home at 10 miles per hour, and proceeded to cry in the corner of my bed in the schoolgirl position for 2 weeks. And then I started researching, what the heck did I do wrong here? What was it that I did? And it was lack of masculinity, lack of leadership.
Mm-hmm. That was the wake up moment. Did you enter the room, or did you hear it, turn around?
Nah.
Like you were frozen, like I imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know dorm rooms, like you can hear everything. Yeah, it was just through the door. Hell no, man. If I entered that room, I probably would have choked that dude out or launched him out the window. So it's best that I didn't do that. But it was a wake up call for sure, because I treated her like a princess and it blew up in my face. Now you can treat women like a princess without it blowing up in your face, but it's that knowledge of how to lead her to where she wants to be led, which is what I always talk about, controlling the frame, which I believe we're going to talk about in this episode.
Absolutely.
Showing her you have boundaries, etc. So that's what I did wrong. And once I understood it, I was like, oh, it was my fault. And I take responsibility for it. So it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because now I am where I'm at today.
Mm-hmm. Is there any part of you that regrets not doing anything? You said you choked the guy out. Perhaps you don't kill the guy. There are these moments where you are being disrespected in a major way, and it does warrant some sort of action. And yes, there is also a legal law that we must follow. That has been something that I had similar experience. I wasn't necessarily cheated on, but there was another guy like consistently hitting her up and trying to ask her out, where I had allowed that to occur and sort of thought I was the bigger man by not caring and just sort of acting like this didn't affect me when it did. And I've also had situations where I did confront the guy, and it felt so powerful to stand up for self, confront the guy, and for him to back down.
Yep.
It's been an interesting journey of what is the bigger man?
Yeah. So I think if you confront her, that's weakness, because ultimately women are going to do what they want. And as I always say, trying to possess a woman is like trying to grab the wind. The second you try to make a fist and grab the wind, it goes around your hand. But if you let it go, the analogy for letting women go, you possess it completely. So I understand confronted men, and I've told guys to step off my women too. Like, hey bro, she's taken. She's not interested. Leave her alone right now. Walk away. That does feel empowering, because you're showing your masculinity. There is something also empowering about not doing anything and just being like, whatever. You know, if she slept with that dude, and this was my conclusion, if she slept with that dude, why would I want her back in the first place? So I let her go. We never talked again.
Yeah.
That was done.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me because now I have my dream woman who I was able to attract because I learned what I did wrong. So I think it's a question of you just got to make that decision in the moment, and moments will come where you need to decide. But most of the time, violence, even well-intentioned, always rebounds upon yourself, as they say in the Tao Te Ching. So I try to take the non-violent path as much as I can, but will admit I was a bouncer once. I've choked somebody out before, and it was he bloodied my lip, so he deserved it. But that felt pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
Even just the confrontation, like there was a guy who was hitting on my current girlfriend. I hired him as a personal trainer to assist my girlfriend, and so he's being paid. And I hear that he's texting her. At first, he gets her phone number because they're coordinating, so it makes sense. And then there's texting going on that has nothing to do with working out. Then I discover he's filming her, and sometimes not telling her that he's filming her while she's doing the squat positions and some of these leg and glute workouts. And then he's starting to ask her out to not just dinner, but he's asking her out on vacations, like to Europe and this and that. And that was when I was like, okay, this is done. This is over. And she's consistently saying in the text, I have a boyfriend now. I have a boyfriend now. And she's just a really nice girl. And I'm like, hey, stop texting this guy. It had nothing to do with working out. That is done. There's no more friendship here. It's over. And I go confront him at the gym, and I straight tell him, hey, I know that you're texting my girlfriend. Her name is my girlfriend. You're her trainer, and you're texting her inappropriately. And he goes, no, I'm not. And I said, bro, I've read the text. I'm right there next to her when you send them to her. And he literally steps back and is like, oh, well, it's not like that. I'm like, it's not like that. You mean you're inviting her to Europe? You're inviting her to Mexico? You're inviting her to all expenses paid trips? I was like, that has to end now. You've crossed the line and it needs to stop. And so then he started to laugh. And that was when I was like, so you think this is funny? I was like, this is not funny. You will not talk to her ever again. And if I talk to your management, this is like a luxury gym where it's like $300 a month. If I talk to your management, you will lose your job. This is so inappropriate that I'm paying for you to hit on my girlfriend. And that situation, it was a heated situation. And there was a line of people behind me trying to check in. And I'm just super in the zone, just kind of drilling this guy. And his peers are kind of standing behind him watching. In that situation, I turned around and I was like, my blood was pulsing. But man, when I left, it felt so good to confront the person who is disrespecting you and for him to back off and completely go away. He's never texted her again. The whole situation is over. And that's more of a lesson just for men in general. I think in situation, like I'm not necessarily pointing out, hey, your situation, you should have done. I'm not going into the past. I'm pointing out that for men, you said there's a split moment where you get to decide what you're going to do. And those moments arise for everyone. How are you going to show up in moments? And I think that's where your whole frame that you help guys with comes into play, because sometimes you're just in your own frame and then it can easily be broken and this other person's frame overtakes yours. If you could share about that.
Frame control basically means who's leading the interaction. I always tell my guys that if a woman discovers that she has a stronger frame than you do, she cannot get attracted to you. And that's so important. I like to say it twice. You have to have a stronger frame than she does for her to get attracted to you. Why? The person who's in the stronger frame is the one who's leading. The one who's leading is the one who's in the masculine energy. Masculinity leads, femininity follows. So frame control is leading the interaction, taking her to a good place. And what I always say, leading her to where she wants to be led. Now, in frame control, we have reactivity. So reactivity is the person who's reacting the most, who's most affected by the conversation, who's perhaps negatively affected. That's the person who has the weaker frame. So what's cool about what you did, and I was listening closely, is you had people behind you. That's social pressure. You had his co-workers behind him, social pressure. But you were able to take the social pressure more than he was. Therefore, you had a stronger frame and you won that frame control battle. Well, women are going to test your frame. They're going to test it by saying mean things to you, asking you for favors, asking you to explain yourself to them. And this is what I did with my first girlfriend who cheated on me. I went into her frame. I was like, let's go do what you want to do. Let me buy you a bunch of stuff. Let me kiss your ass. And that basically shows her I'm in the masculine energy, meaning she's in that masculine energy. And so she lost all attraction for me, found that frame in another dude, and then cheated on me. So oftentimes we think if I just give her what she wants, if I just placate to her and supplicate to her, she's going to like me, because quite logically, that's what we think works. And then it blows up in our face, which is why I frame my coaching around frame control. It is the structure of everything that I do. Done a ton of podcast episodes about it, because a lot of guys don't know this, that, oh, I've never even heard of this thing before. Frame control. What does that mean? Once they realize it, they realize not only a lot of their interactions with women have gone bad because they've lacked it, but also interactions with coworkers, interactions with friends, with your parents, with everybody in society. It's all frames imposing upon other frames. Now, you may think, well, does that mean I'd be stubborn? I don't take any shit. I just my way or the highway. No, because a cool frame, a good frame, is the one that's imperturbable. It's lighthearted. It's joyous. It laughs. It's not affected negatively. So with all those people behind you, social pressure, all his coworkers, social pressure, you're fucking in the zone and you're like, hey, bro, this will not stand. So you're going to stop texting her right now, or I'm reporting you to Lifetime. Was it Lifetime Fitness? Because that's usually the most expensive, was it?
I don't want to put the name out, but yeah, it's a gym just like that.
Yeah, dude, Lifetime, $300 a month. It's ridiculous. So anyway, anyway, I'm going to report you to management. So you'd be wise to step off. And then he acquiesced to your masculine power. Now, not always is it battles like this. We're not always going in life with this like controversial energy. In fact, as I said, the strongest frame is the most accommodating. The strongest frame helps other people out. This is cool. But when it's fucked with, as I always say, it shows its boundaries. So a woman will ask you for a favor. Like, oh, Andrew, can you go get me a napkin? And what I always say is, before you do a woman a favor, like she's testing you, obvious favor, have her do something for you first. So you say, yeah, ask me in an Australian accent. So she's like, oh, go get me a napkin from the bar. You say, for sure. Ask me in an Australian accent first. And then she asks you in an Australian accent. You say, and my Australian accent's really bad, so prepare yourself. Right away, mum. Like a boomerang, I'll be back in a minute. And then you go get the napkin, give it to her. Now she knows that your favor must be earned. So you can be good to women, but it's under the precedence of her respect must be given to you first. And that gets attraction. And that's frame control.
Mm-hmm. I noticed too that in that instance, it was playful. There's a playfulness to it within a powerful frame. It's not an asshole frame of domineering, because you can take this too far and just be an asshole. And that guy still does have frame. He's an asshole frame, and he's an arrogant guy who's going to get what he wants. And that frame is too far. But the playfulness, I think, is the key in most situations. It can be playful. It can also be sexual. You can turn that into a sexual thing that a woman can play with. And that playfulness creates that vibe between the two of you. And it's also bold as well. It's the boldness. It's you're penetrating through daring sexual language that is different than most other men she is communicating with, which makes you stand out.
That's right. So I always tell my boys, when she challenges you, now there's a difference between a challenge and an innocent question, such as, and this is an innocent question, why don't you have a girlfriend? She just honestly wants to know. In that instance, you can definitely explain, say, I haven't found her yet. You know, I'm looking, I'm dating around, seeing what's out there. Just haven't found her yet. But if she's like, why don't you have a girlfriend? Like that, which girls will do all the time, challenging you. Like, because I'm not good enough, and they try to get you to justify yourself to them. That's when you flip it on them. And I have different ways to flip the frame. We have agree and amplify, misinterpret, reframe, ignore, and then question her question, all of which we can go over. But let's say, for example, she does say, why don't you have a girlfriend? Agree and amplify is basically saying what somebody says and making it 1,000 times worse. So Andrew, if you said to me, Mark, you're gay, aren't you? Instead of me being like, no, I'm not gay, dude. I'm totally heterosexual.
Defensive
I'd say,
frame.
Exactly. What
justifying,
you do, you agree and amplify. So I say, yeah, bro, I'm so gay. I sucked 200 dicks yesterday. My jaw's killing me. And with a smile, as you pointed out, and then they can feel, okay, this guy just controlled the frame on me because he's unaffected. So when a girl says, why don't you have a girlfriend? I'm going to amplify that. I'm going to say it's because I'm a bad kisser. And I would say, oh, I'm a really bad kisser. I do the helicopter tongue maneuver, the jackhammer tongue maneuver. For some reason, no girls like it. She laughs and you pass that check. If she says, for example, and this happens to me all the time, why are you wearing that shirt? We can misinterpret that instead of saying, well, it's Gucci and it fits me good and I got it custom tailor-made and all that, justifying yourself. You say, look, I know you're trying to take off my shirt right now, but relax, we just met. With a smile, and that puts into play what you just said, sexual tension as well as playfulness. So there's ways to flip it. And boys, women are going to test you. Make no mistake. And they probably have tested you. And if you've inadvertently lost attraction in the past, this is probably one of the big reasons.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the justifying, the what you should not do and where that comes from. So justifying neediness, weakness. So where does that come from? And why is that the default, it seems, for men until they learn, until they ascend and grow?
Exactly. So we think quite logically that if I explain myself to you, you're going to like me. We are taught this literally in school. This is how schools work. You explain to me why you did that, and I'll give you a grade to say whether or not it's good enough. We are already in a supplicatory frame, meaning the weak frame when it comes to our teachers. Now, the reason why we do it is because we think it builds rapport. We think it's going to make people like us because that's how we're taught. Like when you finally replied to my email after I hit you up 75 times, you and we got on a call. I'm like, what's up, bro? Oh, you're in San Diego. So is my brother. That's like building rapport. It's an agreeable conversation. And that works well with dudes. But with women, you have to be careful because if you try to sell yourself, justify yourself, try to earn her endearment, what does that communicate? It communicates on a subconscious level that you don't think you're enough. And this is why when guys come into the nightclub wearing a Ferrari hat or like bragging about how they're a lawyer, it immediately turns women off because it communicates to her, oh, he doesn't think he's enough. And a guy who doesn't think he's enough is low value, as we say, a beta, and she's looking for an alpha. An alpha is not going to justify himself. She's like, what do you do for a job? I always tell girls I'm an ass model. I'm like, yeah, famous ass model. My ass is up in Times Square, huge 50 by 50 foot picture of my ass right there. And I joke about it to let her know, like, dude, I'm not trying to sell myself to you. I don't care what happens. What does that communicate? I have options. I have lots of girls in my life. So that makes me attractive immediately.
Mm-hmm. I was recently reading this article, the son of who was at the time the CEO, his dad was the CEO of Microsoft. And he was like a younger guy at the time, the son, and he would use that as a pickup line. Like he would be like, hey, my dad is the CEO of Microsoft. Or when conversation wasn't going well and he would start losing her, he'd be like, hey, wait, like my dad is so-and-so. And there was one woman he said who responded like, really? Use a different pickup line. And then turned around and walked away. And it was like, wow, his dad would be a billionaire at this point. And that frame that we're talking about of supplicating, of justifying, even in that situation, it still was not effective. So we might think, well, maybe there's certain things you could say that might overpower this frame, but that frame is so powerful that once you're in it, it really doesn't matter what you say because she is still above. So it might even be worse in his situation because he would have to say that, and you would think that he wouldn't if that was the case. If you're the son of a billionaire, we would think that you would already have some level of value that you could provide beyond using your dad.
But look how low value that is. He's so unsure of himself that he has to rely on his dad. You're flying on your dad's coattails to try to pick up girls. It's almost unattractive, and it is unattractive. It's a horrible pickup line, right? Instead, what I would do is I wouldn't say one damn thing about it. Then when she asks who I am, I'd be like, yeah, I'm the son of, let's say, Bill Gates. Okay. And that's definitely the reason you should never date a dude who's the son of a billionaire, because those guys are assholes. They think they're God's gift. They can get whatever they want. They're totally spoiled. So now what you're doing is you're actually pushing her away. And I have a podcast episode called Push Her Away, Push Her Away, Push Her Away. And this is one of the skills. Why would a guy push a girl away and say, don't date me? Only a guy with super high value would do that. Reason being this is attractive is because it's so rare that when you get a high quality woman or even just a regular woman who comes across it, she's like, wait a second. Every other guy's trying to sell himself to me, trying to kiss my butt, trying to take me out. And this guy's saying you shouldn't date me because of XYZ reason. I'm attracted to him. And it's so counterintuitive the way it works, but that's how it is. Women are attracted to your value, your survivability, how apt you are to survive in today's society. A guy who survives well in today's society doesn't need to sell himself, doesn't need to justify himself, is confident within himself, and doesn't need you in any way whatsoever.
That's the key right there, is that he doesn't need you, which must mean that he is of high value if he does not need you, which then suggests that she might not be valuable enough. So then that would create the frame of like he's above and she is below. Now, for guys who might be listening, they're thinking like, look, it just sounds like a lot of games. Like it sounds like I'm constantly having to play these games. Like, can't I just relax and be myself?
Yeah. So this is how you'd behave anyway if you were high value. So we do the act as if, or as we often like to say, fake it until you make it. Because if you had your inherent self-esteem that you were born with before, I will add, other people came and messed you up. Your mom, your dad, your siblings, your coaches who gave bad meta programs inside your head. I'm not enough. I'm not attractive. I'm too short, fat, ugly, bald. I look like a chicken McNugget with tits or a potato with a bathing suit on it. Whatever belief system you have, we need to question that in a way where we don't buy into it. So if you feel that you're being stubborn or you're acting a certain way that isn't true, this is the way you'd act if you didn't have these bad belief systems. This is the way you'd act with your inherent self-esteem. Do you think a 3-year-old kid who goes up to anybody in the crowd and talks to them is self-conscious? No, because they haven't had those meta programs built into them yet. So while it may feel contrived or disingenuous, in my opinion, it's the most genuine way to be. Why? Because your job is to believe in yourself, brother. Your job is to believe that you are the prize. You are the catch. You're the quote unquote hot chick. How many guys think that? Very few. When you do, you feel justified in everything that you do. And this is why I named my podcast The Unapologetic Man. It's because I'm not apologizing to you for being who I am, for being attracted to you, for being a man. I am who I am. I accept myself fully. And if you don't like that, I'm afraid I can't help you with that. I'm going to be cool to you as long as you're cool to me. I'm going to show you a great time. I'm going to give you tons of value. But if you don't see it, then I have better things to do. I don't need you. I have plenty of options. That's the vibe that gets women attracted to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have 2 nephews, and like one is two and the other is 6. And I can learn so much from them just by being around them, because they are 100% unapologetic. Like they will just do and live and speak, and they will experience life fully unconstrained. If you have kids or nephews or nieces, it's a good thing to look at. Just their social dynamics are usually unfiltered until they start getting older. And that level of freedom is widely attractive, especially as an adult, that level of owning your identity. We're talking about the fake it till you make it, or like, I'm going to act as if I have plenty of options. But for the guy who doesn't have plenty of options and he is actually single and has been single for a long time. I mean, a recent statistic that I had come across and did a video on was the sexless men in the last decade has tripled. For men, it was like in their 20s and early 30s or so. And, you know, that's an alarming statistic. And so there's a large group of men who actually are just struggling with finding and dating consistently the types of women they want. And so I feel like they're in somewhat of a downward spiral where it then becomes, they have like a history of being single and of perhaps watching a lot of adult content, and that it would be very difficult they couldn't even comprehend how to fake it till you make it. Like I simply don't have the experience. And so I'm really actually by default needy, because this is a biological function of wanting intimacy, wanting sex, wanting connection from attractive women. I need that. I don't have it, and I don't have a history of it. So for these men, fake it till you make it, or saying that I am enough or that I have it, like when they simply don't, like they actually don't have it.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to kind of send some compassion towards dudes like that, because not only do I have a lot of clients like that, but I was that guy too. I mean, I couldn't get laid if I was in a Tijuana brothel with $100 bills strapped to my penis. It was that bad. And not until I started learning this stuff did I get better at it. So my answer to that is, this is a skill set that's developed experientially, which means going out and actually talking to people. Now, I have this thing called approach and eject, which is you approach a woman. It doesn't even have to be an attractive woman. In fact, I always suggest you start with slightly unattractive women or grandmas or people you're just not attracted to, simply ask a question. Hey, where are the watermelons in this place? Where's the freeway? Where'd you get that Starbucks cup? Hey, is that gas pump working? It was broken last week. One question, and then you eject. And what I always say is eject before she can reject. So rather than going in expecting, okay, I got a strong frame, I am a champion, I'm the prize. That's the ideal black belt level that I want to get all my guys to. But initially we have to ease into it. And we do so with that kind of strategy approach and eject. Also, I want to get you in an abundance mindset. A lot of guys have the mindset that women can't be trusted. They're all cheaters and liars and crazy and hysterical, and they're too much energy to handle. I actually just did a podcast about that, which is an illusionary belief that we want to remove from you with both NLP. I use neuro-linguistic programming on my clients, and I do some podcast episodes about it, but also with experience. So going out and just talking to people, strangers or friends I haven't met yet. How many people have that philosophy? Strangers or friends I haven't met yet. People are really cool when you're cool to them. Yes, even attractive women. So before I teach you what to say in the next time after your first question and how to build attraction and sexual tension and qualify her and do hypo stories and the cube and strawberry fields and all these techniques that I teach, hey, let's just go out and talk to people, get social. You don't even have to put that much energy into it. In fact, those with a strong frame are comfortable in who they are and they don't try to be anything else. So I don't want you being a spaz. I want you being you, and just go talk to people. Then we get indoctrinated into that. We get more experience. We realize, just as you did, brother, when you went into that fitness place, a lot of people have very weak frames, including this dude who was texting your girlfriend. He crumbled. And most people do not understand frame control. They don't understand social dynamics. And this, by the way, is why we have all these sexless men. They're not approaching. So this opens up this wide opportunity for the rest of us to approach, because I have many attractive girlfriends and they're like, oh my God, I wish more guys would approach me. Guys just don't do it anymore. They do, as you said, they watch porn. Maybe they'll get on Tinder and Bumble, but they don't approach. So when I get my guys approaching in a positive way, which means going up and giving value, not trying to take, what I always say is be a go-giver, give her a good conversation, give good energy, not necessarily compliments, but just a good charisma, and then leave her on a high note. Oh my God, women freak out about this. I have women of my clients who write me and say, thank you for getting this jackass out the door to go approach girls because he approached me and now we're together. So it's that step by step, little by little, the elephant is eaten bite by bite, but it has to start with getting out there, getting experience, and also awareness alone is curative. Now that a lot of guys are being introduced to this frame control concept about leading you and accepting yourself unapologetically, they can start stepping into that. And it's a process. It's a growth. And that's what's fun. Growing is amazingly fun. And so that's the first step of this. So if they have nothing, rest assured, brother, I had nothing too. And I don't care what your age is. I work with guys in their freaking 70s who get success. There is time. It's just a systematic approach of getting out there and doing it. And you can sidestep rejection almost completely with these kinds of methods.
Sometimes you do have older guys who were in a relationship for 10, 15, 20 years, and then there's a divorce or breakup, and then they come out and they have not exercised this skill at all. In a social setting, they haven't really had to put themselves out there. They hadn't viewed the world through this lens. And so there is that guy as well, where he's not just someone who was struggling with women, but he just hadn't been active in the game for quite some time. And when I did that action in the gym, my girlfriend loved it. Like when I expressed what I did, I was like, hey, so I spoke to so-and-so today, like while we were eating. She's like, really? Yeah, I told her the story, and she was like, the way she looked at me was like very puppy eyes, like, oh my gosh, like I was the hero of this. And I did it in a very respectful way. And there's been other situations that have occurred where I have a friend who is pregnant. So it's my girlfriend's friend. She's pregnant, and we were at this festival, and she was just like 2 months pregnant. She didn't look pregnant. But this guy behind us, which he wasn't allowed to do, he was in the audience watching the concert. This guy was smoking a cigarette. He whips out a cigarette and starts smoking it right behind us. So I turn around and I ask him like, hey, can you go over there and smoke? And he said no. He's like, no, I can't do that. And he just kept smoking. And so I kept saying like, hey, like it's not allowed here. Could you just go over there and smoke? And I was like, my friend here is pregnant. And he looked at me took a big whiff and blew smoke in my face. And my girlfriend's right there watching. So just instant reaction. I just ripped the cigarette out of his mouth and I throw it on the ground and just kind of push him back, like kind of lean towards him to push him back to go over here and then turn around and walk away. And yeah, he got all flurried up and he got all wild, started yelling. His friends came, they didn't do anything. But that was another situation where I'm like, wow, I'm on a roll here, like standing up for myself. But here's how I look at these two individuals, the personal trainer in the gym and this guy who blew smoke in my face, is they needed me to do that. They needed a strong man in a frame to correct them, because perhaps I was somebody that you should not mess with. And I'm a part of some sort of like gang or something where I just stab you. You can't go your life just disrespecting other men. And I think that these guys have just gone their lives not getting corrected in their behaviors. And they've been allowed to do this for so long. And I think the guy in the gym, he won't do that. I think he's going to be very respectful to when a girl says, I have a boyfriend, because he's going to be in fear that this guy might come to the gym and confront me in front of my peers. Or this guy who, if I blow smoke in another guy's face, he will respond and he will physically involve himself. And I realize that I'm actually not going to do anything. And so I feel like for guys to step up, I'm not throwing blows. I'm not breaking things. I didn't like grab his desk and throw all the papers over, but I confronted him with confidence, assertiveness, not aggression. And same with this other guy. I tell my friends, I helped him the same way I'm helping our listeners here. He needed that level of confrontation for him to acknowledge his place in the world, to acknowledge that his behaviors are wrong and that he can't live his life this way. So there's a level of if I do this, I'm going to come across as an asshole. Or I think there's a way in which you go about it where you gain respect. And by the way, I kept going to the gym and the guy would see me and he would just completely avoid me. Or he was a guy checking people in too sometimes. Sometimes their trainers do that. I would walk in. I wouldn't even check in. I would just walk past him and look him in the eye because I was like, I don't even need to deal with you. Like, what are you going to do? I probably shouldn't even be paying. Like, you guys should refund everything if I actually speak up. He didn't say anything because he knew his role. He knew he made a mistake. I think there's a level where you are still adding value and helping others by being a grounded man in how you go about the confrontation is where I'm getting at. I think there's this, I don't want to be an asshole. Or they had a dad who was that way, who abused them. And they're like, I don't want to be like my dad. And that gives birth to these nice guy tendencies.
So I like to use the example of the silverback gorilla tribe. So the silverback gorilla, interestingly enough, when he gets the role of silverback, meaning the alpha of the entire tribe, his testosterone goes up by 55%. Now, we immediately think that testosterone is aggression. It's toxic masculinity, as a lot of the movement in today's world is going to have us think. But what's interesting is the alpha male or the silverback gorilla is actually the most nurturing one, the most caring one, the one where if the child gorilla falls out of the tree and bonks its head, it's going to be the silverback that goes over and cares for him. So what I always say is not to be fucked with is a big concept that I teach my boys. Hey, you're cool to people. In fact, with that guy smoking, I would have been cool in the beginning. I would have been like, hey, brother, I know you just want to smoke right now. They're not letting you smoke anywhere. That sucks. But my girlfriend here is pregnant. Would you mind, brother, just stepping over 10 feet? I'm always thinking you catch more bees with honey. And I'm sure that's what you did too. But when they start disrespecting, blowing the smoke in your face, and they escalate it to the next level, I think an unapologetic man is willing to escalate it to that next level and say, hey, once again, I'm not to be fucked with. What you're doing is wrong. And as you pointed out, a lot of these people who are violent, who are negative towards others, they've suffered. Their parents probably did it to them. So they're very unhappy people. And I like to have compassion for these people. And that's frame. Frame is being above the situation, such as Obama said, when they go low, you go high. And so a strong frame isn't the stubborn, I'm going to kick everyone's ass. It's the opposite. You are that alpha silverback. But when they disrespect you, as you did, you got the cigarette out of his mouth and stomped on it. When I was in the nightclub as a bouncer, homeboy bloodied my lip, so I choked him out. I practiced Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Same, yeah.
Yeah. Do you really?
I did for many years and competed, yeah. when I was younger.
Good for you, man. So, dude, it's like throwing a tiger into a shark tank. Like, there's no chance for these guys.
There's no chance unless he trains.
No chance.
Unless he trains, then you have a good, little grapple.
If you've been doing it for 6 months or more, and that's also a part of, I think, being that alpha is that, you could talk a big game, but what happens if it goes to blows? What happens if the fight goes to the ground? Can you defend yourself? That's why I took BJJ. Didn't like it very much. I became a blue belt, and I periodically go. I kind of have a messed up back, but the point of the thing is, can you have the belief within yourself to confront somebody, but always with compassion and, I dare say, love first, to deal with it in a kind way and say, hey, bro, like, my girlfriend is pregnant, so would you mind?
My girlfriend's friend, just so people who follow me know, like, Andrew's pregnant. Like, it was my girlfriend's friend who came out with us. No, girlfriend is not pregnant, just for the record.
Big announcement.
Yeah,
big announcement. So that's the friend.
I just saw this thing with Kevin Hart, because this was a couple days ago. He's like, for that silverback to become the silverback, he often has to be the current leader to then own that role. And then what happens to that gorilla that was the leader? He leaves. He is like abandoned by the community, and he has to venture off into his own. And then what he tries to do is go beat up another silverback gorilla to reclaim his role. Kevin Hart was saying, I don't know that it's a bad if you lose. You basically are single and you get to go out. And anyways, that was his joke about it with the frame control. But it's very primal. And I think we forget that we are a part of this mammalian species where the alpha, the beta, and these things are very real. And we do have primal energies. Use primal energy, but through a grounded frame or with class.
Yes.
And be able to back it up. I definitely highlight the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think it should be almost a required thing for men, at least exactly 6 months to a year to understand the fundamentals, and then include some level of striking as well, such as kickboxing, and doing that for 6 months. That would do a lot for men. You would be in the top 1% already of men being able to defend themselves. And so knowing that would bring a lot of confidence, assurance, and ability to own your power by actually testing yourself with other men and knowing that you've won is very powerful. Something that happened to me when I was 18 years old, I remember I was at like some sort of administrative office, and I referred to the woman behind the desk as dude. And it was just my lingo growing up in Southern California. It's just a part of the culture, saying dude as a common thing. Like, oh, look at that dude, this, that, dude. You say dude too much almost. And there was a guy behind me. I can remember this very clearly. He stepped forward and said, don't call her a dude. She's not. And then just walked away. And I remember feeling, wow, I just got checked, and he's right. At first I was like, am I mad? Like, do I want to defend myself? But I had nothing to really defend myself with verbally. What am I going to say? Like, no, I can call her what I want. No, that's actually not correct. I was corrected. And that feeling was, he was right, and I needed that. I was much more aware of how I went about calling people certain lingo. Ever since that moment, it was a moment where I was on the other end of being confronted by someone who was in a much stronger frame.
Yes. I think that if you agree with what he said, which it sounds like you do, you could be like, yeah, my bad. I'll work on that moving forward. And I think that takes a strong frame to admit when you're wrong. I was just on vacation and I accidentally took a leak in the girls' bathroom and I didn't see it, right? And it was in a foreign language. And I came out and there was another American chick, one of those like, what do they call them? Karens with the short haircut that's all spiked. And she's like, excuse me, that was the women's bathroom, dude. And she actually called me dude too. And I was like, oh, my bad. I didn't see that. I'll be more careful next time.
Yeah. It's confusing now. It's like
oh my God, don't get me started.
It's like you go in either or here, and sometimes the pictures are like, it's got multiple different figures on it. And so you go other places and sometimes it's not safe.
You don't know. So if she went harder than that on me, like, what kind of idiot are you? Are you serious? You can't even read? What I often do is I have a concept in frame control called all about the other. So what I say is when somebody attacks you, right? it's easy to flip the frame on them. And this is called reframing. So if she's attacking me, I may be like, whoa, slow down. First of all, you're getting way too fired up about this. Okay. What's going on with you today? Why are you in such a bad mood? So you flip it on them and you say, what my favorite 4 words in the English language are, the real question is. The real question is. So I had a guy the other day comment on how skinny my legs are. And yes, Andrew, I have deer legs and I've always been that way. By the way, I grew up in Newport Beach, so there was a lot of assholes in there too, in Southern California. But I had a guy say, hey bro, don't you ever do leg day? And I said, the real question is, why are you staring at my legs? So you see, he questioned me in an asshole way. And I flipped it on him saying, wait, what are you doing staring at me, being so focused on me, being so into what I'm doing? It's a little creepy. And that's something I'll say too. I'll be like, Sarah, it's a little creepy how interested you are in fill in the blank. She says, why don't you have a girlfriend? Whoa, Sarah, easy. I know you're trying to be my girlfriend right now, but relax. It's a little creepy. So if somebody's being a dick, you flip it on them, all about the other. And I love that term. The real question is, I approached a girl in the nightclub the other night and I did my opening line, whatever it was. And she's like, is this what you say to all the girls? And I said, the real question is that what you say to all the guys when they approach you? Is that what they taught you to say in the Cosmopolitan, the girly magazines for how to rebuttal a guy approaching you? And immediately she's like, no. And now I'm in the strong frame because I flipped it on her. So memorize that, man. The real question is, somebody questions you, such as Andrew, if you were to say, Mark, why are you wearing a black hat on a professional interview on the Knowledge for Men podcast? What kind of idiot are you? I'd be like, the real question is, why aren't you wearing a black hat? This thing's the shit. You just ask the question back to them with the real question is before it. And this is what politicians do. They're constantly flipping it because they don't have to answer your questions. They ask you questions because their frame is so strong. So that's the philosophy I have. If I'm wrong, I'm like, yeah, I made a mistake. My bad. But if they're coming at me as an asshole, I'm going to flip it on them. I'm going to be like, look at you right now. I had this lady yell at me. I accidentally parked in this wrong parking space at the post office. And this like freakazoid post office woman who was going to like blow her fucking top because I parked in this spot came yelling at me at my window. And I kind of sat there just kind of smirking. And I was like, look at you right now. You are so pissed off. There's literally a vein coming out of the side of your forehead. Do you know that you're in great danger of having a stroke anytime soon? Calm down, lady. Life is not that serious. Where do you want me to park? Okay, cool. I'll go park over there. In the meantime, I suggest you relax because it's getting pretty close to stroke time. And it's that kind of, you're going to be an asshole to me. I'm flipping it on you. I'm calling out your behavior. That's frame. And we have to do it sometimes with women too, because women are going to challenge you boys. They're going to test your frame like you test a piece of plywood at Home Depot before you slap it into your basement. You need to see if that thing can hold up. And if your frame is in question, she's going to say something about you, about your clothes. Why don't you have a girlfriend? You're too short. Think about, if you're listening, think about the one thing that you're insecure about. Maybe you're too short. You don't like your body. You don't like your nose like me. I have a huge schnoz, right? You got skinny wrists like I do, whatever it is. When you start talking to women, they are going to point that out. How would you respond? Me, I'm skinny as hell. And if girls are like, oh, you're so skinny, I'd be like, yeah, my dad actually died because he was taking a shower and he slipped down the drain. So every time I have to take a shower, I got to watch out for the drain because I might slip past it, which shows again that I'm secure in myself. I don't need to sell myself to you. And I'm going to amplify what you said, which curiously gets them attracted to you because you're showing that you're not trying to win her approval. You don't need it. And that's frame control.
Mm-hmm. It seems like the frame control creates this level of attraction in that moment. What if this persists? What if this continues? Like, you're going to keep saying that joke or that?
Yeah. Great question, Andrew. Once you pass it once, twice, sometimes 3 times, it stops because she just feels something inside herself to be a dick. As girls, my girlfriends will often tell me, they're like, I don't know why. I just want to be a dick to him. And I say the reason that is because it's really in your lizard brain. And we went back to like chimpanzee behavior, silverback behavior. This is all like lizard brain primate behavior. For her to just kind of say something bitchy to you or test your confidence or ask you for a favor, once your frame is solidified, the frame checks stop. They stop doing that stuff to you. If it goes into question, they'll start doing it again. And if you don't pass these tests, not necessarily just by reversing it on them, but just by leading her, by being decisive, by hearing her say, oh, I really want to go to Acapulco on a vacation. You put that in your head and then you buy the tickets and you're like, and this, by the way, if you're in a serious relationship, do not do this with a girl you just met. You buy the tickets. You're like, come on, babe, we're going to Acapulco, leading her to where she wants to be led. When you have all that in your relationship, which Andrew, I'm sure you do have in yours, they don't test you anymore. Why? They don't want to test you. They want to be feminine and come home and just be like, okay, what are we doing? Just sweep me off my feet. Show me a great time. Let's do it. And then you're like, come on, babe, let's go. And so it ceases to be in question. But here's the one thing. If they do question it, if they're kind of bitchy to you, it's a good sign, boys, because it means they're potentially attracted to you. So sometimes we're like, damn, girls are bitches, man. They say some effed up stuff to us. No, that's a good sign. She's testing to see your frame. Also, when your frame becomes really strong and you speak well, you have good tonality, good presence, they don't test it at all. And not at all. Sometimes I have to try to provoke them to test it just because I enjoy it. But most of the time now, because I've been coaching for so long and I've experienced a lot of women, they don't test me. And it's a little bit of a disappointment because I enjoy the playfulness of flipping things on them.
Yeah. I think as we get out of dating and more, well, you should never stop dating. But I think as you develop the relationship, a lot of these tests will diminish. It still will happen. And there will still be opportunity within that relationship, but it is definitely less frequent because she has accepted you. She is in your frame and she is in love with you at this point. The container that exists is one in which she can be feminine in. And I think these tests, we're talking about the lizard brain, this is rooted in safety. And if you can't pass her test, then she just doesn't feel safe. And that's her trying to see, am I safe with you or not? Can you handle shit? Yes. Can you handle these little things or not? Because if I'm not safe, then there's no way I can respect you. I can be sexually attracted to you. And at the root, I feel like this is safety. If she feels safe, then she can begin to open the doors into connection. Without that, it's closed. She's got this huge wall up against you and she's going to fight you, not let you win. You pass those tests. Oh, well, there's a door. The door's always been there. She opens it. You can walk right in and she can then play with you and reveal her true self, her feminine, playful self, sexual self.
The way she's thinking is, if I can push him around like this, then what's society going to do to him? Is he going to be able to pass on genes to my children that's going to make them successful? That's what attraction is all based on, which is super interesting, is the baby. We're attracted to women for health signs. Nice hip to breast ratio, beautiful hair, nice skin, nice teeth, glowing eyes. That's all health signs to have a healthy baby. She's attracted to you also for the baby, but for the characteristics and traits that you're going to pass on to that baby, meaning survivability. How apt are you to survive and thrive in today's society? A guy who's able to survive in today's society isn't going to buckle when she's saying, oh my God, your pants are too high. And by the way, that happened to me a couple weeks ago. She's like, your pants are too high. And I'm like, why are you staring at my crotch? And immediately passed it because I show her that I have high survivability. You can't get into my frame. That's what attraction is based on. You used a great analogy with the Great Wall of China and the door. I have another analogy I like too. It's the Rock of Gibraltar in the middle of the ocean, unmoved, steadfast, permanent, and her waves are slapping up against it and can't affect it in any way whatsoever. That's frame.
That's a good analogy for frame. What helps with frame as well is being around other men who have strong frames.
Yes.
That community, that environment that you're in, you'll rub off on that. If you're with weak men who struggle with women, even in their relationship, he's clearly not in his masculine, or you're around your friends who are just divorced, they're chronically single, being around men who have strong masculine to feminine dynamics in their relationship and how they handle different challenges and issues and conversations, and seeing that level of communication regularly, I feel you adopt that. You're like, oh, that's how you do that. Oh, that's how that works. You can see where it's not working in other men. That can, though, rub off on you and you can become like that. So having strong men in your life, this isn't like having a fraternity of men in your life. Can't have hundreds of friends, but even just having 2 to 3, 4 strong men in your life is a major asset for life that I think is underappreciated and lacking today, especially with social media, especially with just how many distractions exist. I believe, are seeing less men engage in strong male friendships.
It's hard to find allies out there, but they are out there. And what you guys are doing, listening to a podcast like this one, is by far the best first step. Because if you get into this energy, you are going to attract other men who are also in this energy and attract more women, by the way, as a result. How many people work on themselves in this way? How many people, whatever it is, 54 minutes in, are still listening? If you're still listening, you follow through on your commitments, you want to learn. And in my opinion, that puts you above most other dudes who are just going through life like a leaf on the river, no plans, just at the whims of their programming inside their head. So I respect anybody who puts this time into themselves, listens to episodes like this one, because it helps, man. And you will attract those dudes into your life and get to that next level, which is, in my opinion, why we're here. We're just here to evolve.
Absolutely. Evolve, grow. I studied history in college. I wanted to be a history professor. I thought it would just be so cool.
I can see you doing that, bro. I can see that.
I would read the history textbooks when I was like in middle school. The first week, I watched the history documentaries, all as a child, History Channel. I still do watch documentaries. I love history. But one thing to point out in history that has shaped a lot of the world that we live in is who are the country's allies? And we still see that, especially today. Who are your allies will dictate a lot of your future. And when I look at other strong men, you can view them as allies in life. This is my ally. When I have a challenge, when he has a challenge, we work together to solve these challenges. And together we're stronger than being isolated. We're seeing this play out right now where you have countries being invaded or at war, and then you have allies come in to save that country. Without allies, a lot of these smaller countries would not really exist, and bigger countries would gobble them up. And so I'm thinking for a guy who is expanding his life but feels stuck. I find that when you have strong men or growth-oriented men professionally in their relationships and in their health, which is really, really hard to find. A guy who's dialed in all aspects of life is actually really hard to find. Usually you find a guy who's a multimillionaire, like struggles with women, or he's like super overweight and does drugs, or he's really good with women, but he's broke and he's struggling because he's broke. To find somebody who's dialed and growing in all aspects is so powerful. So to form this in your life is, I think, one of the greatest assets that you could have to create lifelong value, lifelong growth is who are your allies? And if your allies suck, you usually get invaded, usually fail when it comes to, usually get like overtaken by catastrophes or challenges that may happen in that country. And that could be different challenges that happen in your life or different catastrophes or crises that occur in your life. And having strong allies, I feel, is missing, and one of the greatest levers that a man could pull to expedite the quality of his life experience. Allies.
Yep. And it's even the voices in your ear, right? Like, I have allies. Jocko is one, never met him before. Met you, have listened to your podcast. It's always about just putting that positive message into your brain, those things that you want to hear, those things that lift you up rather than take you down, getting rid of negativity. For God's sakes, don't watch the news. Everything you're going to find out that you need to know about the news will be told to you by a friend or Facebook. So do not watch that negativity. And it's about surrounding yourself in that positive energy matrix, because then you attract it, you become it, and life is a mirror. Everything you put out, you get back. It's also working like this. First, you think of the picture, then you paint it, then you step inside of it. And this is why I work on the level of neuro-linguistic programming to remap belief systems in my clients' heads, remap traumas and meta programs, because it's that important. And when you live in that space, those low vibrating people that aren't becoming what you're becoming, they'll fall away and you'll get new people. It just happens. But I think you guys listen to this podcast is absolutely commendable. That's what to do. You guys are definitely doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Continuously on that growth trajectory. Now, a lot of what I'm hearing from what you do is with the cold approach, or some of the examples that I've heard are around cold approaching. What are your thoughts on dating apps?
Oh, I love them. So what I would say is, from quantity comes quality. So we don't want to just cold approach. We don't want to just do the dating apps. We don't want to just do what I call top of funnel ideas. We want to do all of it. I want my guys talking to as many women as possible, getting into conversations, because from quantity comes more quality. And when you're in that state of talking to many women, you're not outcome dependent. You don't give a shit about what happens, which is the perfect state to be in. So I want my guys on every mode possible, talking to usually 10 women at a time. Whether or not they choose to sleep with them is up to them, and that's a whole different conversation. But I want them out there dating, experiencing, and growing, because one of the biggest reasons I love being a dating coach is it makes you grow as a man, and it makes you develop into the next best version of yourself. And most guys make more money. They get more confidence. They're happier as a side effect of just getting better with women, which in my opinion should be the main objective. I just want to be the best dude I can be. I want to get to that next level. Girls will come, and they always do. And that's what I base my coaching on, which is, dude, be proud of yourself. Love yourself. You are the prize. You are the champion. You're working on yourself. She's probably not working on herself the way you are, yet you still feel like you're less than she is. Question that thought. All thoughts are illusions. What I would say is belief systems are BS. Belief system also bullshit. It's a complete illusion. Your brain is neuroplastic, that you can change and remove belief systems. You can limit traumas from the past. You can begin believing in yourself like you did when you were 3 years old and you would approach anybody. What would your life be like if you had that kind of self-esteem? That is able to be gotten by doing exactly what you guys are doing. Listening to podcasts, maybe you invest in a coaching program, following dudes like Andrew, etc. This is the way to get to that next level, and it feels good. And in my opinion, it's the purpose of life. So when you do it, you're rewarded with dopamine, serotonin, girls in your bed, money in your bank account. So worth it, this self-development kick. And that's why I love it so much.
Absolutely. I do think talking to 10 women at a time, I think is too much. There's a point where I feel like you can have too much abundance where you're not connecting with the ones in your life and you're starting to lose. And some of these women may sense that. With the dating coaching I had done, I would say develop 2 to 3 connections and then always filter out the lowest quality one so that you're always upgrading your base set of just 2 to 3 women you're talking to. And then eventually you have like really high quality 2 to 3 women, and then select the best one based off values and vision. Before my current girlfriend, which I'm this is like the best relationship I've been in, hands down. This is like such an awesome relationship. I'm so happy to be a part of this. So if she's watching this, that's for you. But when I was single, I was really getting after it, and I built it was one of the funnest times of being single at this age, at this place in life. And I had like such a good system and rotation of high quality women in my life. And then I selected the best one. And how I went about that was through dating apps and just being social with my peer group and going to different events and always just engaging, adding value, capturing phone numbers, and just inviting those women into social things that were fun and exciting. But the 10, I'd be like, wow, that's a full-time job.
Well, you have to understand, when I say talking to 10 women, it's consistently opening and ejecting, hitting chicks up on the dating apps, 10 in that way. Actually dating, we're at 3 to 4.
Okay.
We're at 3 to 4 because, yeah, bro, it's a full-time job. You got to text with these girls. You got to hang out with them. It's a lot. Usually most guys need about 5 hours a week to get this. And I hear you had a dating coach, as did I back in the day. And it's an immersion phase to where you're like, all right, I'm taking the next 3 months to get this part of my life fixed. Let's get after it. And that takes immersion because it's a skill set. But yeah, bro, like I have dated 10 girls once at once. It was ridiculous. Full-time job times 10. But you can always be talking to girls, and some slip out, some come in, and you're just consistently doing it. And I like what you said too, is you had social groups, you were doing activities and hobbies. Great way to meet women. And that's what we brainstorm, is how can we get into situations where you could just meet as many women as possible, and the good ones will come through just as they did for you and for me as well. I basically have a wife. I approached her at 11 p.m. in a supermarket when I was dressed like a homeless man. I had pajama bottoms on. My hair was messed up. Meanwhile, she just got back from a modeling gig, so she looked like all beautiful. And I approached her and was able to get her phone number. I wouldn't have been able to do that unless I was cheated on. And I went through this whole journey. So me getting cheated on was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And that's the way you got to look at tragedy, for sure.
Absolutely. Turn that into a growth opportunity. I think that going on a journey and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. That's what I did when I was single several years ago. when my friends were like, oh, what are your goals? The friends were like, oh, I'm going to triple my income. And like these great grand goals, like, oh, I'm buying my dream home. I'm going to remodel it, da, da, da. And it's really cool. Admirable goals. Then I remember being in a hot tub and I was like, oh, I'm just on a journey to find the best partner possible. And that's the journey I'm on right now. Like that was the number one thing on my mind. And I think some men may think that's too try hard, or that when it happens, it happens. That is a common thing that I see is like, look, I'm focused on myself. I'm focused on my goals. And if it happens, cool. If it doesn't happen, cool. I'm just going to continue on the trajectory that I'm on. And what do you think about that response?
If you're on a mission to meet the best woman possible, you cannot not improve yourself in other ways. They're the same thing. So you got a guy who's like, oh, I'm just working on myself. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. That's what it takes to be able to attract a higher quality woman than the women you've perhaps been attracting up until now. You have to improve your confidence. You have to improve how you feel about yourself. And in so doing, when you improve your self-worth, most of the time you make more money. Most of the time you make better friends. Most of the time you are going to triple your income or get that dream house. It's one and the same. They're byproducts of one another. And that's why I like being a dating coach, is because this is more like life coaching than it is me telling you how to go out and get laid. I certainly do that. We have a million techniques and principles and rules and frame and all that, but it's about becoming the best possible version of yourself today so that you can attract the 10. If you want a 10, you got to feel like a 10. You don't have to quote unquote be a 10. You just have to feel like a 10 in your own mind, because women follow the masculine. So if you feel worth it, she's going to say, yeah, you're worth it. If you feel I'm not worth it, she's going to say, you're right, you're not worth it. So it's all about remapping inside the head, feeling worth it. And the byproduct is self-improvement, making more money, getting that dream house, everything you just listed.
Those things are valuable to grow. But I would say though that like going on a date on a Tuesday, that might not, because I was on a journey, I was like, I will go. Or if I had to drive like 30 minutes, some guys, if it's like, hey, it's Thursday, I'm not driving 30 minutes to this date. But for me, I was like, nope, this is the journey, and I would go. So if I'm only focused on work, I probably wouldn't go on those dates, unless it was some guys that are very successful would be like, if it's convenient for me and it fits within what I want, then I'll do it. But then they have less opportunity. They have less experiences. I also had a rule at the gym that I was going to. It was a luxurious, right on the beach. And it was known to just have this gym was better than LA, like Equinox. Like this gym on the beach in San Diego was known to have influencers, the models. It was like a destination within this city. And I worked out there, and I made it a goal to talk to one girl every single time I went there. And that was a journey. I would have awesome connections. I would start building social life. I would go on dates from that. But that was a conscious skill. Like I have friends that are very successful who would never do that. And I think that's the difference. They're still working on themselves, but that extra oomph of like saying, I'm going to work on myself in this direction is a big difference, which led to abnormal results. And my friends now a lot of them still single, whom I love and respect and learn from in many facets of life. They won't do these things that are outside of their personal growth or success journey. Whereas I was going above and beyond, and I didn't have excuses. Like I was like, I have no excuse. I only have action. I have action and growth. That is the difference for massive success, and then being able to select the best one on your terms.
Agreed. A lot of times it's easy to get into this self-development kick and just be what I call a podcast jockey or a keyboard jockey, where all you do is get info and you say, oh, I'm working on myself, when all you're getting is info and you're not putting yourself out there. One of the hardest things to do is to approach a woman who you're attracted to. And when you approach a woman who you're attracted to, it makes you grow exponentially in that single moment, because you could listen to a dozen podcasts. They will not equal that fear, that social pressure, that embarrassment that you've overcome to approach her. And when you do that, you get so much growth. You get so much experience. I respect what you did. And that's what I try to push my podcast listeners to do, my clients to do. Get out there and just approach and eject. It is completely, absolutely harmless. You are not going to get rejected. Then once you get comfortable with that, we're going to ask another question. Once you get comfortable with that, we're going to use a little attraction building technique. Once you get comfortable with that, next thing you know, you've built a conversation to where you can yank phone numbers and yank dates. And we do so systematically, but there's always a part where you have to kind of like a rock climber jumping up from one rock to the other and he has to grab on. There's always times when you have to challenge yourself. That's where growth is. Growth is not in the comfort zone. It's in the discomfort zone, unfortunately. But you can ease into it like an old man into a warm bath, as I always say, and not have to put yourself in a place where you might get rejected so hard it like blows out your self-esteem for 2 years. You ease into it slowly. But I respect what you did, bro. You're just like, I'm going to the hottest gym because I'm Andrew and I love really good gyms, apparently, where all the hot girls are, and I'm approaching a girl every single time. Love it. I have so much respect for that.
And it didn't count unless the conversation lasted at least a minute.
Good for you.
That was the key, where I had to extend the conversation beyond the awkward, beyond the silence, and to keep it going. Then I would say that counted as like a genuine, I'm not going out for an approach. I was going out for one connection a day, that requires a bit more. And then I would usually either then or the next time I saw them, I would go for some sort of contact exchange. And that level of consistency, the same way that I was working out consistently to get a good body, the same way I learned how to surf, the same way I learned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like you have to show up consistent. You have to challenge yourself. That is a huge part of what led to create this amazing dating life where I was in what I thought was the best relationship I ever had before. And then just through this experience it was like such an exciting time that led to the best result that I'm in today as a result of the journey, as a result of willing to put myself in uncomfortable situations on a consistent basis and not being perfect. Like people who knew who I was at the gym, and some of them were clients, they would see me and they would say sometimes after, like, you're actually not what I thought. They thought I was like Rico Suave, like super, everything perfect. But I basically am awkwardly approaching and make it fun. I am somewhat awkward in these initial conversations. And I think that throws people off because they think that you have to be the best looking guy or the most socially savvy guy. But I awkwardly approach. And I just own that. And that, in a sense, I feel makes her feel a little bit safe because I'm not perfect. If you're too perfect, too suave, it's like you're probably a player, you do this. But I sort of just look like I'm stumbling. I look like it's like kind of cute, but it's still confident. I had a friend and he's like, there's not one guy who was approaching girls in this. Like, this is literally a haven and there's always new girls coming in. It's like the cool thing. And there's not one guy that's doing what you're doing. And it's like, you have created, this is better than going to the club. This is better than just in the way that I did it. Cause I wasn't going to clubs. So I was like, this is my club. Like I was treating this gym and I would mentally prepare the same way, like how I used to when I used to go to clubs and bars and stuff. When I was driving to the gym, like I was mentally preparing I was like, whoever it is, and I would see her. And then I had a rule where it's like, you have to do it within a minute. Like you have to do it. Obviously you want to do it right away, but I would kind of assess the situation. Like, okay, what's going on? And then I would, you got to do it then. Cause like, she's gone. I would never see her again. It just always seemed to work out like that. I was like, where did she go? She disappeared. But that level of commitment, I think, is different than a guy who's like just working on himself. Like if you just work on yourself, you won't get good at jujitsu. Like you need to go do jujitsu. You need to go do the thing that you're lacking. And by creating these challenges by myself, sometimes friends were there, but like I was doing this on my own. And if I didn't see a girl at the gym, I would go to the park that was nearby. Later that evening, that was like a social park. I would do it then. And I couldn't go to bed unless I did it.
Good for you, man. You know why I think you're successful? First of all, with women as well as in this podcast, one word: authenticity. You're very authentic. What I would say is light yourself on fire and let other people watch you burn, which is what I try to do on my podcast too, is just be completely authentic, care about your boys, care about trying to deliver a content. And when you talk to a girl, if you're nervous, you can even admit it. One of the things I tell my guys to do is be like, hey, I'm a little nervous to tell you this, but I thought you were cute and I had to come meet you. Women find that super endearing. So it's that authenticity that I feel, because you've done the self-work, because you've done approaches, you're able to be that. Why? Because you accept yourself. Accept yourself as if you chose how you are, and you will be authentic. And then women are attracted to that authenticity. So I think that's part of your success, both with women as well as on this podcast.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, the journey is beautiful if you want the journey, if you embrace it, if you love it, and you just respect the trials and tribulations through it. I feel that you can get what you want. I wasn't someone who had success approaching early in life. The whole thing is still challenging to me to this day, but I will do it. I will put myself in that uncomfortable situation, and results follow. And then you move on. You just go to the next stage. You start dating her. You start advancing in that journey. Yeah, that's the journey. What journey are you on right now?
I just want to help as many guys as I can, trying to grow my podcast as much as I possibly can. That's my main objective. I feel like it's a very positive message that helps men who are struggling. It makes my guys feel good about being a man, being masculine. So that's why I hit you up, and I wouldn't stop hitting you up. I had no quit. I was just like, I need to get on Andrew's podcast because you got a really good podcast. So I would be honored if you guys would go listen to my podcast. It's called the Unapologetic Man Podcast. Hopefully Andrew will leave a link for me in the description below. It's the highest rated dating podcast on the market right now. It has the biggest following. I actually just did a bunch of research on it in a dating for men podcast. And it has a cult-like following because I try to give really good information in the most succinct way possible. If you can spell unapologetic, then you have right to all the gold that I drop on there. Unapologetic Man Podcast. And also I'm hoping there's a link there that you guys can check it out. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to give you value. I want to help men. That's my genuine purpose here. And so far it's been great, but I want this to grow, and I'm doing whatever it takes to grow it. So check it out. If you like it, great. If not, completely understand. But if you resonated with the frame control stuff, I would definitely search frame control with my name, Mark Singh. You can even do a Google search for it. Or what I'll do is I'll give Andrew an episode that I think you'll really resonate with that talks about some of that stuff. I'm also an NLP coach, neuro-linguistic programming. I do NLP, which is brain remapping of belief systems. Because as I talked about, belief systems are so important for success. Do a little bit on my podcast, but I do it in my coaching program. So check it out, man. I think you'll enjoy it.
Awesome. Guys, check that out. And as we start wrapping up the show here, Mark, what is something that you are working on right now in your life?
I'm working on trying to overcome certain fears that I have of medical type issues. I used to have panic attacks, agoraphobia, and really high anxiety. I used to have really big fear of needles. And I don't know if you're watching on video, this is like 13 hours of tattoos. I never would have been able to do that. So I'm really facing my fears in every way possible, which I feel again is part of the purpose of life, is to follow your fears. And right now I'm delving deep into NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, around some of my traumas that I had as a kid. I had a lot of surgeries. My dad died when I was 10. He was alive one day, dead the next, of diabetes. And so I have a lot of issues with that. So personally, that's what I'm doing. But also my podcast, as I said, my business, trying to help men. I'm trying to teach guys what I wish I could have learned when I was younger and when I was struggling with women. And I get guys too who are divorced after 25 years. They're like, I have no idea what to do. I love helping guys like that. It's just my purpose here. So those two things, my business and trying to overcome some of my own limiting belief systems to become the best man I can be is my mission.
Powerful mission. And I can definitely get behind that. My father had passed away 5 years ago, almost exactly 5 years ago, because it was in March, mid-March. How has that impacted you? Like, what lessons have you arrived at such a young age? How has that shaped your journey?
His death has made me so successful because I feel he's watching me as your dad is watching you, Andrew. And you have to live the best life you can in his honor, because your dad and my dad didn't get to carry on, didn't get to live their life out to the fullest. My dad died in his 50s. I can only imagine that your dad was young too. And so every day I'm just like, what can I do to honor him?
I think for me, I allowed myself to go into vices to numb the pain initially. I was a little bit older, so I had access to these. And I think for me, he would say at that time, like, he would not want me to live this way. Like, he wouldn't want me to hurt myself as a result of being in pain, as a result of his loss. Like, he would want me to live life as loud and unapologetic and as vibrant as I could. There was like a huge growth trajectory that would then come after, coming out of that cave.
It's like a rubber band. The more you go into darkness, the more you can go into light. So let's say your dad went to the other side and he had the total picture. At the time, you may have felt he's disappointed in me because I'm in the darkness, but now look how much light you've gotten. Without that darkness, the light wouldn't have been possible. So he understands having the total picture, it was necessary. So you may think, oh, my dad was judging me. He thought I was a POS back after he died. I think that he's proud of you because of what you've become out of it. And that's the way I look at my dad too, because I did the same thing when I was 10 years old. I was a total basket case. I had, like I said, agoraphobia, panic attacks, anxiety. I was a mess. I considered suicide in my early 20s, couldn't get laid all through my 20s pretty much until I was about 25 and started learning this stuff. Does our dad and our people on the other side judge us for that? Should we judge ourselves for that? Hell no. You need the darkness to go to light. That's the whole point of this incarnation on earth, in my opinion, is to set up that polarity of darkness and light. So yeah, we can go into depravity, but we will come out eventually. And that's the whole point.
That's a powerful lesson for guys listening. Mark Singh, Unapologetic podcast. As he said, if you can spell it, you can capture his lessons. It's been really good having you here on the show, Mark. Good connecting. Your persistence paid off.
Appreciate you, brother. Hey, listen, failure cannot cope with persistence. So you just keep trying. Just hit up Andrew 100 times, guys. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I just kept hitting him up because I genuinely wanted to come on. So I sincerely appreciate the honor, Andrew, to come on your awesome podcast. I try to make my podcast the same level and I aspire to be at that level. So thank you, man. It was truly an honor and I sincerely appreciate it.